Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving right into the deep end of the intense historical and literary layers of Psalm 7. We're going to be exploring David's oath of innocence, unpacking a really fascinating ancient text about a king under fire. Drawing from an insightful commentary by Marc Bates, we're going to see how a desperate plea for justice from thousands of years ago still hits the nail on the head when it comes to how we understand conflict, truth, and vindication today. So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with a king under fire, move into the oath of innocence, check out the boomerang of evil, and finally wrap up with echoes of the innocent king. Let's jump right in. Part 1. A king under fire. Acute political tensions. Okay, let's set the scene here. You've got David. He is the anointed king, sure, but his position is anything but secure. He's facing this acute, incredibly stressful political tension and lethal slander from Benjaminite loyalists, specifically a guy named Cush. Now, this isn't just some mild political disagreement. We're talking about a severe tribal conflict right after David takes the throne. The old guard, loyalists of the previous king, Saul, are just leveling these massive false accusations against him. The text actually labels this an individual lament called a Shiggaion. And yeah, the exact technical meaning of that word is a bit of a mystery. The Septuagint just casually calls it a psalm or a song, but what we do know is that it was born out of total chaos. The king's integrity is under violent attack. And listen to how David opens this. He immediately takes refuge in Yahweh, but he describes the slander of his accusers with this absolutely chilling metaphor. He says they're going to tear my soul like a lion, rending it in pieces. Think about how visceral that is. He doesn't treat these false accusations as just, annoying office rumors. He describes them as a lethal, predatory attack, like a wild beast violently tearing him apart. So here's where the tension just skyrockets. He points out that there is literally none to deliver. The local justice system has completely broken down, the king is backed into a corner by powerful political enemies, and we really have to ask, what's his next move? Where do you turn when there is absolutely no earthly court left to hear your case or clear your name? Which brings us to part 2, the oath of innocence. Plea for vindication. This is the structural core of the text, and honestly, David's next move is extraordinary. Instead of blowing up in anger or taking matters into his own hands, he completely bypasses the corrupt human legal system. He essentially files a direct affidavit with the supreme judge of the universe. The way the text is laid out is brilliant. The first 9 verses give us this private, desperate, first-person prayer directly to God. But then, right at verse 10, it shifts gears entirely into a confident third-person discourse addressed to the whole assembly. It transforms from this agonizing personal plea into a bold public declaration of God's righteous rule. Right inside that initial prayer is David's oath of innocence. Now, we need to be crystal clear on what this ancient legal mechanism actually was. David is not claiming to be this flawless, absolutely sinless human being. No way. What he's doing is making a highly specific denial of the false charges being thrown at him, things like betraying an ally. We see similar oaths in places like Job 31, and they basically function as a total, complete surrender to divine jurisdiction. You can really see the intensity of this oath in its conditions. It's this terrifying threefold self-imprecation. David basically says, look, if I'm actually guilty of these crimes, then let these 3 things happen to me. Let the enemy pursue my soul, let them overtake it, and let my life be trampled into the dust. He is literally putting absolutely everything on the line before God. So, instead of going after personal vengeance, David calls on God to wake up the decree of judgment. He asks the divine warrior, who he pictures seated high above the congregation of nations, to judge him based on his Tsedeq and Tom. Those are the Hebrew concepts for his righteousness and integrity regarding these specific accusations. He's staking his local personal mess and tying it directly to Yahweh's universal kingship, trusting the God who tests hearts and minds to make the final ruling. Moving on to part 3, the boomerang of evil, self-destruction of sin. As we get into the second half of the text, it builds into this incredible wisdom discourse. Having laid his case before the ultimate judge, David zooms out to make a broader point about how evil actually operates in the real world. The poetry here is amazing. It's essentially ancient trash talk. Scholars call it a birth parody. The text says the wicked literally conceives trouble and brings forth falsehood. It's painting this vivid picture of evildoers getting pregnant with trouble, laboring with iniquity, and then at the end of all that effort, giving birth to absolutely nothing but disillusionment. The core idea here, sin acts like a boomerang. David moves from that birth parody into a hunting pit metaphor. Imagine these evildoers out there meticulously digging this massive, deep trap, pouring all their energy into crafting the perfect pit to ruin someone else, only to completely lose their footing and fall right into the exact trap they just made. It's a profound, almost comforting reality about divine justice. God's righteous judgment often looks like him just stepping back and allowing evil to organically self-destruct. Evil literally contains the seeds of its own destruction. The violence boomerangs right back onto the perpetrator's head. And once David fully grasps this, his whole tone changes. He doesn't end his prayer in fear. He ends it with this confident vow of thanksgiving, pledging to sing praises to Yahweh Most High because he completely trusts the mechanics of how divine justice works.
Finally, let's hit part 4, Echoes the Innocent King, Prophetic Blueprint.
Let's zoom way out for a second to see how this specific, historical oath from a wrongly accused king became a powerful prophetic blueprint that rippled through the rest of the Bible. To get this, we have to look through the lens of what scholar Walter C. Kaiser Jr. calls promise plan theology. Basically, it means David's crisis wasn't just some random historical anomaly. David is the anointed representative in this huge covenantal trajectory. His trials connect organically to the final establishment of God's kingdom, and they point straight forward to the ultimate innocent sufferer. And we know this for sure, because New Testament writers continually connect David's experience right back to Jesus. The Apostle Paul in Romans echoes David's reliance on God by commanding non-retaliation. 1 Peter points to the sinless servant who, when falsely accused, didn't fight back but trusted the righteous judge. John in Acts used David's experience of being hated without cause as a prophetic pattern for betrayal. And Revelation even takes that exact phrase from Psalm 7 about God testing the minds and hearts and applies it directly to the exalted Christ. So that leaves us with a pretty massive question to chew on as we wrap up this explainer. This text shows us that human justice is ultimately grounded in divine holiness, and that God's rule often involves letting evil simply defeat itself. So if we truly believe in a supreme judge who ensures that the hunting pit eventually catches the one who dug it, how should that ancient blueprint change the way you and I handle conflict, slander, and our own desire for retaliation today? Think about it.